Looks like we're live.
Sorry about that.
Nice.
I'm going to turn off my video.
Didn't mean to surprise you. I've just pushed the button to make us go live, so we're back. Tennyson and Gill and Mark Thomas talking about research roundtable, or really the content roundtable. What information should we find to help us start and run our ventures? And this time I'd like to maybe pick up on some of the things we were talking about before with the nature of the sort of people we wanted to hire, the finding the right culture to build our business with, and really try and figure out how, if we're a network of entrepreneurs, how we can share information between us about maybe places to advertise, ways to advertise, maybe do research, share our ideas about hey, I advertised using these keywords on Facebook and got this sort of response, so that maybe we collect that information and keep track of it, and sort of build off each other's work.
Okay, that's obviously communication is paramount, so secure communications don't have to be an immediate thing, so that's the kind of stuff that we should think about first. But I think that an analogy to something we're trying to do would be, I don't like to say it, but organized crime. So an organized criminal organization has to find a way to communicate with itself securely, do things out of the purview of the overarching state that tries to stop or interfere with the things. And how exactly did they do this? How did they become successful in what it was that they did? So I figured this is probably a good area of research study if you wanted to do that. How do they manage to keep loyalty and secrets and all these kinds of things? And maybe that would lead us to some form of non-aggressive ways to emulate what they did.
Okay. If there was, I guess, any hesitation to use them as a case study, there's also resistance movements during war. How did the French resistance communicate during the Second World War? There might be some other academically acceptable means of communication to study that had the same problem.
Yeah, probably good. Gil, did you have any of your own research? Maybe what did you find anything relating to this?
Yeah, I was thinking about this while we're talking. I guess there are things that I've learned as I've been reading about entrepreneurship. Maybe I should put together a little bibliography of things. This sounds silly, but there's certain things like A Good Hard Kick in the Ass by Rob Adams. It's a great book. Or The Martha Rules by Martha Stewart. There are certain books written by entrepreneurs that really teach you what it's, where you should be focusing your energy. And this is kind of a side topic from communication and secure communication, but in the general sphere of resources, if I had known what I know now 10 years ago in terms of things to read, and for instance, it took me a long time to figure out what are the good books on marketing research. What kind of gets to the nub of how you write a marketing research questionnaire, and that's grounded in marketing science, because this is a whole field of study. And so maybe we should, this is maybe a topic for the wiki, which is a resource area by subject. A lot of what I think of are books, but just today, it just had never occurred to me to try to use Facebook ads. So,
I'm glad I was able to give the idea out. All right. People in the chat room are complaining that there's a little bit of choppiness. I don't know where the cause of that is or what's going on, but hopefully it'll get cleared up as it goes on.
Yeah. Let me see if there's anything on my side I can shut down. I've got the broadcast running out and 2 signals coming back in. Let me shut down one of those, and I'll rely on someone in the next room to come run in and let me know if there's any problem. So I'll just follow the chat and I'll see if that helps at all.
Okay. All right. So the title of the research roundtable is "What information should we find to help us start and run our ventures?" And so, Gil mentioned a regular entrepreneur book, and I wonder if Gil, maybe you've read How to Win Friends and Influence People, and what would you think of something as basic as that? Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. The thing is that I'm a big virtue ethicist, and it's amazing. You look back in the libertarian literature, and you find these amazing things. I was turned on to Samuel Smiles a few years ago because there's a local libertarian here, Rob Bradley, who has written a book on capitalism and Enron. He used to work at Enron, and it's a kind of an expose of heroic capitalism versus political capitalism. And in that book, he kind of reaches farther back in the tradition. And there's this guy, Samuel Smiles, who wrote a book on self-help, and it's really a whole series of vignettes of actual people in 18th and 19th century England that were entrepreneurs and showed how they developed their virtues and became successful. And all of these things are related. Talking to people and relating to people fairly and doing good turns. I mean, my friend Stephan Kinsella makes a lot of jokes because I'm a fan of people like Ziegler. I like reading. I read a lot of these books on success. Just generally success literature, I'd say. I've gained a lot of Napoleon Hill's books. Things like Think and Grow Rich.
Think and Grow Rich. Yeah.
Yeah, or George Clement Stone's The Success System That Never Fails. They're books on how not to procrastinate. I mean, and all of these things are important.
I got a lot of those on the shelf. I'm still waiting to read one day.
Yeah, exactly. And Sam Smiles wrote a whole book on thrift, which is excellent. And my own philosophy, I really like. There's a modern guy who has a radio program called Dave Ramsey, and he really brings home how you discipline yourself to be thrifty in your own life. I mean, if you're going to be serious about being an entrepreneur, and even if you're not really going to start a venture, but if you're going to do a serious side hobby, let's say you're going to help somebody out to do something, well, it means that you need to arrange your cash flow so that you're throwing off cash on the side every month to support things like buying books that matter, going to conferences, investing in some time and resources that you need to get the things done. And it's all about putting your own economic house in order. And it seems like, how could that be related? Well, it's all related. It's all virtue ethics, So...
that is the philosophy of virtue ethicism, that you can't fully have one virtue without having the other virtues as well. So you're going to be incomplete somewhere if you try and just go one particular direction. You got to have it all. And of course, Sam Smiles' books are available online. If you go to the Gutenberg Project, you can find thrift, you can find self-help, you can find a bunch of the other things that he's written as well.
Now, are any of those uniquely libertarian or anarchist? Aside from sort of the assumption that it's virtuous to not do harm against other people, are any of these written by people familiar with libertarian ethics?
Well,
I
no, but go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, Smiles is really from a time of Victorian England when liberalism, or at least something that passed for liberalism, was kind of taken for granted. It was just, that was how the world was. It was a, I don't want to use the word Whiggish, but I guess it was kind of Whiggish. And that, progress and prosperity and work and this kind of do right by others, it'll be done right by you, put in labor and you will get reward. Those kinds of general liberal principles were things that everybody held and took for granted.
I see we've got a comment in the chat room about whether the sort of regular, typical self-help entrepreneurship stuff, how appropriate that is for some of the more radical counter-economic ideas in entrepreneurship.
So I don't know if I can. When he says counter-economic entrepreneurship, are we talking about black markets?
Let's take that, because that's the extreme case, and I guess part of the problem with that is the mainstream considers it anti-virtuous. You're following a set of virtues that the mainstream is being told are not virtues. I wonder.
Well, and there's a certain amount of Randianism in there, maybe being a heroic capitalist and eschewing sacrifice, at least as sacrifice is defined within the objectivist system. But I think that, I guess I have 2 points. One is most of the things that one can read on being a good businessman or being a good entrepreneur are they're somewhat devoid of ideological content, and even where they have ideological content, they're much more strongly libertarian than you might think. I think that is certainly true of Samuel Smiles. I'd say it's true even of Napoleon Hill in many cases. One of his main, and what Napoleon Hill did was he went and he looked at a bunch of entrepreneurs, and then he trying to distill from it what are the key elements that these people, what are the ideas that these people imbued in order to become successful. And of course persistence is one of them, but always being fair dealing is one of them. Nobody has really gotten ahead from consistently screwing other people, and it's a very libertarian point.
But
and then the other
economics, you have to worry about cases where you may be acting virtuously, and I'm thinking about weed dealers up in a little mountain community I've lived in. They may have been treating their customers well and have never harmed anyone, and then they get busted and dragged through the mud, and all the good virtue they've used to preserve their reputation gets slandered in the press. So I wonder.
So I've never really been a fan of people like Ayn Rand. I haven't really read a lot of stuff by her. I've read her nonfiction, but not her fiction. But in some ways, I kind of like the idea. I kind of think that libertarian entrepreneurs need to be kind of like Superman or Batman, where what you're doing is, the bad guys get to play all the dirty tricks. And we're the good guys, and we can't play good dirty tricks. So, it's an Agora conference, right? And it's all about SEK3 and everything, right? But I'm basically I really I think that white markets are where it's at, and that we can win the fight even being disadvantaged. We were talking about. Oh, go ahead.
Saying that counter-economic activity, like the Konkin idea of counter-economics, is using the Misesian Rothbardian definition of economics, which is the sum of all human actions, essentially. And if you wanted to use a Misesian minimizer for economics, which is the study of the study of human actions using scarce resources to create wealth, even if those resources have alternative uses. But counter economics is simply the doing human action that is counter to the state's authority, or say the state says something is wrong and it actually isn't morally or ethically wrong, but it's a malum prohibitum rather than a malum in se. It's doing those things as well. So sometimes there's a gray market to it and a black market to it, but doing the things that the state says are okay, simple white market things are not going to take down the state. They don't threaten the state in any way. Doing things in competition with the state, like providing better security, moral, ethical security, or providing health services, for example, without a license, those are black market, gray market activities. And those are the things that actually do bring down the state.
Well, does internet communications bring down the state? I mean, for the most part, that's white market.
We've seen it in the Middle East.
Yeah,
yeah, we've seen it happening in the Middle East, but of course it is counter to the state. The state is trying to destroy their communications networks. They're trying to block what they're saying. They're trying to distort keep the distribution of their tools from going ahead. And so you have to actually go out and do those things, and they become black market activities, and they become counter economic activities even on the internet with communication.
Right, and I would never maintain that that there's no place for black market activities. Most certainly there is, but let's see. Part of the goal of a good anarchist entrepreneurship effort should be to obtain social legitimacy for your institution. So in order to have that legitimacy, especially when you begin your institution, is to operate it in a way that is legal, and then as your social authority grows, you can start to push against the state.
All right. I mean, so this is. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, that was me. Sorry, Mark.
Oh, that was you.
No, it's you, Gil. Go for it.
Oh, go ahead. So
I don't know if I
the
had anything else. Yeah, I just think that over time, you can't just, we were just talking about von Nothaus in this last session with Stephen Fairfax, and although everything that was done to Nothaus is unjust, there's a certain sense in which the way he went about things invited the attacks that he got. And it's not to say they wouldn't have come after him in a different way, or but he did certain things that as an example, when I first started doing this, I went to there are these community classes that the sheriffs hold. It's Sheriff's Citizens Academy, and I learned all about the sheriff's department, and I talked to the sheriff about doing this and actually found ways that we could work together. So he agreed that when I start the business, he's got all of these alarm calls that he doesn't like because 99% of them are false alarms, and he'd be willing for me to field them all. And for me, they're just marketing opportunities. And there we're cooperating with the state, but not in a way that relies on it, and not in a way that that legitimates it. And so I think there are ways to even work with I know this is horrible, but you can actually work with the cops in certain ways. But you have to have this anarchist core where you know what your principles are, and you have clear lines that you're not going to cross, and certain things you're not going to do. So that's all I had to say on that.
Okay. I mean, I'm thinking really the idea of becoming something to replace the state is going to be, it's going to have to be viewed as legitimate even before the state falls. So if you're going to say, like, so if the state, for example, monopolizes, I don't know, legal services, and you need to have pass a state described examination to become an actual lawyer in good standing in a court, in a monopoly government court, you'd have to find a way to appeal to the mass of people who actually confer legitimacy upon the state and everything else in their acquiescence to the state's depredations. And in that way, you could actually become an accepted alternative even without changing any laws or anything like that. It'd be a mass movement, kind of like how civil disobedience and social civil rights movement kind of went. So that's definitely a way.
Yeah, some of my favorite business models, at least in theory, are where you place yourself between the end customer and the state to provide a service, like a mediator would do, where they're saying, okay, I'll help you resolve your disputes, and then you don't have to go to the expensive and difficult justice system. You can solve your dispute directly, and then suddenly, when the lines get longer and longer, and the delays longer, and the court costs more expensive, eventually you realize that nobody's been to the courthouse for the last 3 years. They've all done their mediation privately, and the state's just done such a bad job that it's made itself irrelevant.
Right, and that's part of the reason to develop. Yeah, it's part of the reason to develop, the mediation arena in terms of case books, and it's also because there's so much mediation going on, but it's kind of under the radar. People do it in certain times, but what do they see on television? They see cop shows. So the same thing is true with arbitration, and of particular importance is I'm really hoping that there will be a libertarian lawyer that steps into the fore, and
well, they're kind of doing it already.
Well, I have my hopes for.
Well,
yeah,
I heard.
Have you watched? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, there's a delay. We're talking over top of each other, but I heard somewhere recently that there was a television show about mediation.
There is. That's what I was going to talk about.
Oh, tell me about it.
If you're watching the channel USA, for example, you'll see a show called Fairly Legal, and it's about a woman who is not a lawyer, but she goes to people who have disputes, and they settle disputes through arbitration or mediation. And that's just one among at least a couple of shows that they have on USA. Which I don't know who's over there at USA doing these shows, but it's somebody who has some ideas there. So another show they have is a doctor who has no license. He was fired from a hospital, but he goes off and becomes a private concierge doctor. And it shows a doctor doing house calls and visits in a particular area for clients for money. Wow. And he has his whole doctor business. And he's taking business away from the established hospitals and their licensed things and all that. So somebody at USA is putting out these shows. I don't know who it is exactly, but I got to find that person. But they're putting it out there, so you can see an actual show where they show the complete disruption, the complete inefficiencies of courts. So, like, nobody can get these court dates. You got to get these things settled. Nobody's willing to talk to each other. And she goes out and says, "No, what we need to do is actually talk to each other. If we avoid talking to each other, we're not going to solve our problems. If we just become litigious and depend on the courts like this, we're not going to actually solve things." And so she goes and does mediation and says everybody can win. It's a win-win situation. That's what she's looking for at all times. So it's a pretty good concept. So
yeah, and a much older version from a generation or two ago. You've brought up before, Gil, in the introduction to your papers, Federal Express and the Postal Service. I mean, the Postal Service has made itself so irrelevant now that if it weren't for Netflix, I don't think I'd be using it.
Oh, you actually get the DVDs from Netflix?
Well, oh, man, Tennyson, you better hide from my wife. I started watching Primer on your recommendation, and Man, I'm having to watch it 4 or 5 times to make sense of it. We're on the one DVD at a time, and so I've been backing up the queue with that. And now she's listening in in the next room and has just figured out who has kept her from getting any DVDs.
Hey, somebody has asked on. Oh, go ahead.
No, it's like you got to do the instant watch stuff and put everything on your queue because there's so much good stuff on there now.
Oh yeah, we're streaming it all now.
Yeah. So
somebody here on the chat says they want to know about those clear lines when working with cops, and it's actually quite simple, and that is that you do not tolerate or undertake aggression. So, as an example, I've written before about possibilities of sharing data. For instance, the NIBRS is the National Incident-Based Reporting System that police agencies report into the FBI to share data on crimes. So they report all the incidents that they know. Being part of that system, I don't think crosses a bad line as long as you do not rely on it in a way. I mean, the ideal would be that you pay for the service that you're receiving, or that, you don't want to rely on a government program for a significant amount of your business model that can crumble at some point and really should go away immediately. But to say that the service is useful is a different thing. Certainly,
yes.
Reporting crimes and having that available and having a common database of, if you're going to have multiple agencies in an area that are patrolling and they each know about incidents, that it should be in a common database. And one of the companies that I like is called Bear Software, and what they do is they aggregate all this data and allow people to share it. So anyway, that's just one of those clear lines, I guess.
Okay. Let's see. No, before we went to break, actually we were already on break, and I started talking about different stripes of anarchists to work with, and it's the real topic of this one is what information should we find to help us start run our ventures, and if our ventures are simply not security based, but are more like doing something that agorists might do, which is like doing a bread service or something, or unlicensed body service, like manicures or massages or something like that. Would it be a good idea to trust people who aren't market anarchists, but at least are ethical in such a way that they won't narc to the cops? Or is it too much of a danger to simply to not do that? And we have to be very insular with our own communities and only trust the 5 people, the 5 market anarchists that we know. I'm
not sure that it can be done easily. I mean, the market is inherently inclusive. If you were trying to sell a product or a service, say to install security software for people, encryption software, it would become more and more difficult for you to turn down people that wanted to communicate securely. You would constantly have that draw to bring you back into doing business with people that you might have sworn you'd never associate with, but yet you're ready to trade.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much exactly the same thing. The market is definitely an inclusive thing, and it's basically no respecter of person. Like, just because you're a captain or a sergeant or something doesn't mean you're going to get a better price necessarily. It tends towards uniformity of price for goods and services, and I think that getting to a point where you can trust other people will almost immediately go beyond your inner circle. So. Yeah, but starting with your inner circle is probably a good idea.
Now, one thing that I think it'd be interesting eventually to try and figure out within the ANCAP Entrepreneur Network, if the society becomes so closed and dangerous that we are in something like a French resistance mode of working, to find business design such that someone like Steve Fairfax could create equipment and measuring devices and ways to verify measuring small amounts of gold, and maybe other people could create devices that deposit it on film, and then their customers become agorists. The people that are buying those services, and I guess they wouldn't be able to be the exclusive market, because then, if you're trying to destroy such a market as a monopolist state, you'd say, okay, the choke point is the equipment manufacturer. But if you could find some business like that to latch onto, where agorist activity is still enabled through it, but the source of that information, the source of the supplies, can't be attacked because it's too valuable. And I think that's an interesting business model to look at.
Yeah, and that's the idea of valuable information. I think comes from not what it comes from in your words, but I think that what valuable information could come from would be people's own interest to defend their sources of goods and services. Say, for example, you're providing a black market good or services to a certain group of people who might otherwise be inclined to snitch to the authorities. If they are, if they really do enjoy the goods or services that they do get, they now have an interest to protect people and to not turn people over to the authorities, which makes them sort of consciously agorist, but it's not fully there yet. Yeah. But I think this is probably a way for any entrepreneur or a black market entrepreneur to try and get things done, is to get in good with a community that you're actually trying to serve, and so that these people will not turn you in. Konkin gives the example of, for example, in China, where Bibles and things were banned and tried to completely destroy religion. An underground nun or something, or a Bible salesperson, it would be in a hallway with a underground prostitute, and neither of them would snitch on each other, even though the two of them may have reasons to disagree with one another. So it builds a sort of camaraderie, being counter-economic in the first place. And the people who even aren't providing the services or goods, but are simply consuming the services or goods, will also be a part of that. So it's a natural community-building, counter-economic thing, and it can probably work as a virtuous cycle that way. So, but I'd like to see how it would be done in American society, which is still relatively free. But of course, in a few years, it might be worse. So,
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, this idea, Gil brought it up before, and it struck me. I first ran across it in Rothbard's Conceived in Liberty, this idea that central authority was the polemic opposite of liberty, and that to try and mix the two in society was unstable, that the system would either gravitate towards one end or the other. And I think they gravitate in different ways, that central authority continuously draws power to the center, and until it eventually crashes spectacularly, whereas individual power just sort of drains off and diffuses without even being noticed.
Yeah, it looks like Gil came back. Gil, do you hear? Oh, there might be a delay still.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry about that. I had my mute on.
There you go. All right, so there you go. Do you want to reiterate what you were just saying, Mark?
Oh, I was just saying one of the things that Gil mentioned before that struck me in the past, reading Rothbard, was the way central control was the was the polar opposite of individual control, and that to try and mix the two in society was unstable. So it's almost as if, in your example, Tennyson, about the strange bedfellows that tyrannical governments make. The state ends up making enemies of everyone, and so everyone sort of makes common cause in avoiding the state and not having disputes with people, because they know that as soon as there's a dispute with the person and the police get involved or the courts get involved in an authoritarian society, it means death for everybody involved.
Yes. Oh,
yeah, I
wondering if
agree
Gil
with that.
had anything to say. There you go.
So,
well, I don't know.
But we were talking about that in the context of business plans and serving different communities. One of the, I guess, ideas I had similar to that was setting up one of these LRN.FM micro broadcasting stations in the little rural town that we're building our coffee shop in. And it occurred to me that maybe the best way to do that, just so you're not the one guy that's putting out all this radical stuff that that people are complaining about, is instead to get a group of radio enthusiasts involved and get them set up so that they go out and set up micro broadcasting stations for the local churches and Kiwanis Club and everything else. And you just promote the diversity, enable people to have small little broadcasting stations, and then let the market decide which information is the most clear to them and the most relevant.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Just looking at my reader, there's an update here, but aside from that, it seems like it's really the job of the entrepreneur. Not everybody, not every thinker or anybody's going to be able to see all the anti-state or counter-economic opportunities that are going to be out there. So this is why we rely on our entrepreneurs. Somebody out there is going to be able to see an opportunity to actually make a profit, and this is what agorism is about. It's trading risk for profit. And the risk that we take in opposing the state, not taking up arms, not doing anything, but in actually simply letting go of it, in a way personally seceding from the state, is real. It's a conscious, concrete, real risk. And not everybody's willing to take all the risk or even the amount of risk that might be necessary to do it. So these are what our entrepreneurs are for. And let's hope that some of them are out there.
I almost don't like the way you put that. It's like, kind of reminds me of the scene in that movie Gandhi where they're trying to go to the sea to make salt, and they line up, right? And they're all lined up, and one of them steps forward to the gate, and the soldier, bats him down with a baton, and then the next guy steps up, and the soldier bats him down with a baton, and after they do like about 100 of them, then the soldiers start realizing that probably what they're doing is wrong. So I guess I get to the front of the queue there and see what it's like.
Well, you either get hit now or get hit later. It seems to be what we got to do here. I'd rather nobody get hit at all, but no, we can't avoid it sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I'm just scanning the comments. I saw there was one a little while ago about 100% aggression-free. To use that as a way to start promoting virtues. And this gets back to what you were saying earlier, Gil, about you need to be a virtuous person that's well respected if you're going to introduce radical ideas. And I think that's sometimes difficult. The state tends to have this completely inverted language that they push out. It's amazing sometimes. I want to see some filmmaker have a scene in a movie. This is Mad Max, and there's the little village with a big wall around it, and the people dressed in cotton, and the little boy with long hair, and the old man with a gray beard, and they look out and they see this gang of motorcyclists coming with baseball bats and spikes. And the little boy says, "Grandpa, what's happening?" And the old man says, "Well, that's the status. They're coming to attack us anarchists." And, the motorcycle gang says, "Oi, we're here to get our tax from you."
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of upside down language gets pushed out on us. I think a good thing is just to promote the virtue in what we're doing, the non-aggression, the offering choices, the ability for people to live according to their own ends. That's takes constant work. It's constant marketing for all of us that believe these things.
Absolutely. Well, let's see. I was thinking of another image that I see sometimes. I go to the Mises.org community thing, and they have a picture that says a narco-dictator of death, which is it's the most incomprehensible thing. It's the narco-dictator. But I think it's definitely a kind of thing that people have when they hear the phrase anarchist. But I think maybe that's going away a little bit these days.
I think it is,
I think so.
I was talking to. I was going to.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say that it was basically in the vein of what we were saying about being a person of goodwill and being a person that's respected. I do well in my line of work, and I'm respected. And if somebody asks me, this inevitably comes up, you're sitting in a conference room or having lunch with somebody, and they want to start talking politics, and you just say, look, I'm an anarchist. And they don't think they don't think that you are silly, because you've already built up with them a capital stock that, hey, this guy's a real person, he's productive, he's intelligent, and so forth, and so it allows you to be, and then when you're radical like that, they take seriously the idea. I'm also reminded. I remember I used to be the president of my village association in Grogan's Mill Village in the Woodlands. This is in the homeowners association, so there's no tax involved. But inevitably we talk about local issues, and the treasurer at the time said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, I oppose all taxation. And she looked at me and she said, oh, it's a brand new idea, but you work with somebody for years, and I think social authority is very important for anarchists to build. What is it? What does this thing mean right here? Bookkeeping, please. What does that mean?
I don't know. Somebody's talking about agorist bookkeeping.
Oh, right. Because somebody said earlier on that
somebody said double entry bookkeeping. So what kind of things would...
Well, I think maybe this is a canard. I don't know, because I don't know if you get... I mean, I've read... Of course, one of the things I had to read up on was accounting. By the way, I just love the teaching company. I've used 1,000 of their things. And there's a great...
Oh, yes.
There's a great video course they have on accounting. And I learned so much about the accounting cycle and accounting from that. And... most companies they have books. They have multiple sets of books, and the number of books they have usually is equal to the number of jurisdictions they operate in plus one. That is,
Okay.
there's a separate set of books for every taxing jurisdiction, and on purpose. Part of the role of the accountant is to minimize the tax liability of the in that jurisdiction, and so I think if we're familiar with accounting. You've got the one set that's the true set you look at, that's your real bookkeeping, and then there are the other sets of books you use to show the tax authorities. And then there is also, if you're a black market participant, then you would never want to compare the different sets of books because they would be inconsistent, because there's a possibility to underreport and so forth to minimize taxes beyond what is even objectively possible within the rules that they establish for
Yes.
for what's taxable and what goes into certain categories.
Schlump and Fickens got a comment about trying to find the relevant parts of bookkeeping. You say the teaching company was a good source. I had to take 3-4 runs at accounting before I could finally have the stomach to get through the books and throw away the 90% that was useless and try and find the meat of it in there that taught you how to actually manage a business and measure it and monitor it. For my son, I ended up writing like 3 pages of this. These are assets, and this is cash flow, and this is how they fit together. Ignore everything else you hear about accounting.
Well, I'm looking on the Teach12 website right now, and it looks like they've discontinued that excellent. Darn it!
So I wonder if
the
the Khan Academy has something comparable, or maybe even better, because the teaching company, the Khan Academy, and there are probably a few courses that you can find for free online at YouTube and other places, maybe even Apple University. You should be able to find lots of free, very good quality information about whatever it is that you're looking for. But honestly, I think you don't even have to think of it in terms of specifically agorist. All this stuff is basic stuff. The relation that you have with your customers, the personability that you have with other people, the ideas, the books like Sam Smiles, the Thrift. All these are simply basic things, and they'll be applicable to every business that you have, no matter what their basis is. And so it's just like chemistry. You simply learn the basic building blocks of these things, how they interact with one another, oxidations, etc. And then you can do chemistry to produce different products. And this is what this stuff is. So you got to have these basics.
Yes, I agree.
And of course,
and I've...
go ahead, Gil. Finish that up.
Oh, I was just going to say, I've employed a bookkeeper. I've employed an accountant. It's... these are things that you don't even necessarily have to learn from books. You can go ask a bookkeeper. You can go say, "Hey, I'm going to set up a little business," and they don't really care. They'll give you the basics, and there are certain workbooks you can get that help with certain types of businesses. So there you go.
Yeah, I think that's it.
The other half of needing information to start your business is, of course, if there's these needs out there, it's an opportunity for somebody that does understand the important part of accounting to provide that service. Something that was useful for me and that I guess helped me understand real guerrilla accounting for running a small business there was an accountant in South Africa that just used to run 1 or 2 day seminars with a lunch in between at a local hotel, and he'd send out fact shots in those days every 3 or 6 months saying a seminar on how to maximize your cash flow. People would come and he'd generate some revenue for the day and maybe pick up 1 or 2 clients with a tough question. I think he gave.
Did we get cut off?
Sorry, you're asking if Gil got cut off?
No, you got cut out. I didn't hear the last part that you were saying, but no, you're back again. Obviously.
Oh, okay, good. No, I was saying that this accountant who was focused on helping people manage their companies, he would give 1 or 2 day seminars on a range of different topics. He did it in with fact shots those days, but it'd be great for Facebook just to put out, hey, I'm giving a seminar at this and this hotel for 2 days. Come get lunch, learn how to maximize your cash flow, learn how to pass on your family business to your children without suffering from tax. Figure out how to manage your stock effectively.
Right. Yeah, and those types of things are available. I myself went to there was a guy who offered a free seminar on starting your own business, and his hook was, it was a 4-hour seminar talking about how to start your own business, but he was also selling a whole set of books on, this is a little bit pre-internet, early internet days, maybe around 2000, and so he would sell this big photocopied set of paper in binders plus some cassette tapes, and I ended up buying it as a very good series there. The other thing that I would mention, and maybe this is just kind of obvious, or maybe it's not obvious, and that is I've learned a ton of business working as an employee. I mean, as I've worked, I've taken every opportunity I can to, we're working on an international contract. Okay, I'm going to learn all about that. I'm going to learn how letters of credit work. I'm going to learn how, what does this clause mean? Okay, I'm going to go buy a book on contract law. And, just being and then watching my managers work, and now I work in a small startup, and I work directly for the guy who's the founder, and watching an entrepreneur work up close and seeing how he works and how he makes decisions and what's relevant, and there's a lot of on the job type learning you can do just while you're still a wage slave, right?
Wage slavery. One day it shall all come to an end.
That's right.
Pretty well. It's up to 25% over at the moment.
So something I wanted to ask you specifically, Gil, because it only semi-relates, but when you were first getting into your specific area of research, what was it that you read that really drove you, said, yes, this is what I wanted to read? Was it reading Rothbard, or reading Benson, or reading Bell, or reading what was it that really got you?
Oh man, I'm not really sure, but I think Market for Liberty had a lot to do with it. But I think it was the combination of reading something like Market for Liberty, which is really radical and strong and plausible, and then reading right behind it something like Benson, which is just filled with minutia of facts, and realizing that, wow, there really is something to this. But, nobody was really doing anything. And like I said, I was involved in my community and so forth, and I looked around and, there's a dispute resolution center in my county. So, I went there and I said, hey, what do you guys do? Oh, we mediate disputes. We get volunteer mediators, just come, and I paid my money to be trained as a mediator over a weekend conference, and then I started mediating disputes there. And there are lots of things you can do, while you're still an employee, or at any time really, to build the skills that you need to understand and build out the business model. It's hard to say, it's a confluence of events, but I do remember when I became an anarchist, and that was while I was reading The Ethics of Liberty by Rothbard. So there you have it.
Yes, it seems like it often starts with Rothbard. The book is called It Usually Starts with Ayn Rand, but I found that it often starts with Rothbard.
Or it ends with Rothbard.
Yeah. Or it ends with Rothbard. It goes to content nowadays. It goes right to content.
Well, and I mean, the conversation going on in the sidebar in the chat room is pretty much the sort of thing that I had hoped we could do with the ANCAP Entrepreneur Network. Is people there are talking about what they need to do in terms of accounting, what resources there are, and starting to put together business plans for coding accounting systems. If other accounting skilled entrepreneurs are in the network, then they can say, hey, well, if you're doing that, I can start giving the seminars, and I can give them to the other business people that want to manage their books for their own benefit and not for a ruler's benefit. And we can start to fill in these gaps in between where, for one person to say, well, I need a secure communication system, and I need a sensible accounting system, and I need to find medical services, and I need, to have a contract with somebody for purchasing something on credit, and I need to make sure that's mediated if there's a dispute. These are all the sort of things that we can start to understand the needs that we've each got for dealing without aggression, and then start figuring out ways to fill those.
Right, and as Peter Klein was saying, there are some, there are a ton of entrepreneurship resources out there. My own experience is that most of the entrepreneurship resources that I find are centered on internet technologies and this sort of thing, which is good for some people if that's what they're working on. But a lot of the things that I'm interested in doing, it's in meat space, and so there are these great books like Crossing the Chasm, but it's all from a tech perspective, and so it takes a lot to translate it over to something that's nuts and bolts and very simple. Okay, I guess that's it.
Mm-hmm. Well,
it looks like we're coming down in time here, so we only got we had less than a minute. So, anything you want to wrap up and say?
Well, officially the time is up. I've got some more long topics I want to start on. I'm just wondering if we should thank everybody that's been in the chat room up till now, and
definitely
maybe we should just continue on. I wonder. Does that suit you guys? Are you guys available to keep talking a while?
Well, actually, I need to get going. Yeah.
Okay. Well, mainly what I was interested in is what the next step was for all this. We can meet again in 6 months at the next agora.io.
It's September 23rd to 25th.
That's right. Lao Tzu, George says it's called.
Okay.
I think in the meantime, I'm going to work with Jeff on setting up ANCAP Entrepreneur Network on the wiki, and we'll just check in there regularly and start adding information to it, making plans for how we get to the next step and what we do there. For all the listeners, thank you for listening in, and thanks for chatting and participating. Visit ANCAP Entrepreneur Network at ancapentrepreneur.net. The tricky part of that URL is figuring out how to spell entrepreneur. But go back there. It's WordPerfect or a WordPress blog at this stage, but we'll probably be converting it over to a wiki in the near future, and then we can start collecting some of this information and getting ready for the next step.
Sounds great. Thanks a bunch.
It's good talking to you all.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Do well in your businesses.
I'm going to sign off a little differently, technically this time, before I've been stopping the broadcast and then the Skype, and turns out that cuts off the end of the conversation. So I'm going to hang up on you guys now, and I'll follow up with each of you later.
Thanks.
Right. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Bye, Gil.
Bye.